Men, and I use the term loosely. Hey, welcome back to the 59XLH project. Remember all that shit you saw me put together last episode? Like the entire primary? Well, guess what? That all had to come out again. So let's back up. Men, let me expound on a couple of things. You've seen me put primaries together on other engines. And I think a lot of guys overlook some of the problems and the finer points of assembling these primaries. This primary has been together and apart. I'm kind of losing track 3 or 4 times due to problems I've run into. The last time I had it together, I thought I was done. Tested everything out, and there was something rubbing. As it turns out, the back of the clutch basket and the primary chain was rubbing on this area of this nut. And I found that, well, you can't see behind there when it's all together. But anyway, I found that by covering this with a Sharpie. Well, took it apart, covered this with the Sharpie, put it, back together again mostly, spun it around, and I could see the scratches in through here. It had to be fixed. So this nut went out to the lathe, and I peeled a few thou off of the backside, and I peeled a few thou off of this area here to get it to fit. But let's look at the root problem. And this one I'm going to blame off on Eastern, not V-twin. Okay, here's 3 Kickstarter shaft gear nuts. This is a new one, Eastern, out of the same batch that the install nut is out of. And these are 2 that were laying around in my leftover pile of nuts. And you might be able to notice, see this slip right here? It's noticeably taller on the Eastern gear than on these other 2. And, these are out of my junk pile. I can't, absolutely guarantee, but I do believe these to be unaltered original Harley nuts, okay? The effect of that ends up being that the nut is, of course, taller than the other 2. And, I could put a micrometer on it. Excuse me, I'll put a caliper on it. And this one is 0.294. This one is 0.259. So 35 thousandths difference in there. And this one is 0.280, so 15 thousandths fatter than this one. So the back side is taller. So that nut that's in there, I put it on the lathe, and I used, these are 1/2 inch 20 threads. I used a 1/2 inch 20 bolt as an arbor to hold on to it, and I peeled most of this material off. You don't want to make them a lot thinner, and I'm sure Eastern thought they were doing everybody a favor by making them thicker so they'd have more thread engagement. Not so much. These engines have little or no clearance in many critical areas. But anyway, on the other side of the nut that I machined and modified, I also removed some of this area. I didn't measure it when I did it. I just did it by eyeball. I tested it, and it seems like it's okay. But anyway, I made it smaller. I did not machine all the way across because I did want to keep these extra threads, a 1/2 an extra thread, doesn't matter, probably not, but the more thread engagement, the better. And just to FYI, here is, like I said, I believe this is an original HD nut, and you see where this is worn over here? I do believe because this one was banging against the primary chain and the back of the clutch basket. And this one survived relatively unscathed. But anyway, bad nuts. Nobody wants a bad nut. Let's pause here for just a minute. Let me add in a little bit I forgot to mention in the original filming of this video. There are other ways to increase the clearance between the back of the clutch hub and the kickstart gears and mechanism and nut and all that. And one of those ways is to put a longer spacer between the clutch and the bearing in the trapdoor. That only works to a point, because the longer you make that spacer, the more it could throw the alignment off between the front sprocket, the compensator sprocket, and the clutch basket. So that's one of the reasons why on this project I elected to machine the nut rather than put a bigger spacer in, because a bigger spacer would have thrown the chain alignment off. Okay, next problem requiring disassembly. I don't know, second, third time, I don't know. The discs would not fit over the clutch hub. And indeed, this one is binding a little bit. Let's get rid of that one. These are the discs that I'm using on this engine, and they fit nicely now. And you want the discs to move smoothly over the hub. If they don't move smoothly over the hub, the clutch won't release properly. So you want them to go on smoothly, and you want them to slide up and down on the hub. But anyway, apparently some ham-fisted fuckstick was beaten on the clutch hub, and there was a significant burr on all of these teeth. So me and a Dremel tool spent some quality time together and ground the burrs off. Tremendous pain in the balls. I probably should have checked that before I put it together, but I did not. Anyway, that's another disassembly. Bad splines on the hub. Okay, here is another disassembly. This is the backing disc that was installed in this thing in the beginning, and it's quite a bit thicker than the stock ones. I really wanted to use this because I thought that looked like a good idea. Put it all together again. Guess what? Found out that the last clutch plate would not fit. It would not engage the splines on the hub. It was too proud of the hub. Well, that's going to cause a problem. And like I said, this is the one that hurt because I thought I was done with it. No, this isn't the one that hurt. The one that hurt was the nut rubbing on there. And as you can see, here is the stock backing disc. Geez, this thing is probably 3 times as thick as the stock one. So apart it came again to get rid of this and install this. Ay, ay, ay. And the last problem that honestly I could have dealt with while it was assembled, when putting the clutch together, the threads on the studs were dicked up. I probably could have chased them with a die while it was installed, but I took it apart. It was just easier to put it in a vise and run a die down on there. I usually make a point of chasing all the threads in the tapped holes and the external threads, but I did not on these. They looked okay. I didn't think I was going to have a problem. A couple of these were really dicked up, as it turns out, and I could barely get a nut on there. So it came apart again. So I am now fixing, as they say in Texas, I'm fixing to install this for what will hopefully be the last time. I've test fit the chain. the basket and the compensator sprocket, spun it all around, nothing is rubbing. So hopefully third, fourth, fifth time, whatever it is, will be a charm. Point being, be careful when you're putting a primary together. There's a lot of shit that could go wrong in here. A lot of shit that could go wrong in there. It's just a pain in the balls to deal with. You know, you got to get your pullers out. You got to lock the sprockets. You got to lock the basket and the hub. It's just kind of a lot of work. You know, I have all the tools, which makes it, of course, much easier. You know, and I have sockets that fit, so I'm not beating the nuts on with a chisel and a hammer. But anyway, be careful when you're putting a primer together. A lot could go wrong on one of these. If not used to work. And just for the record, so you know, the plastic mallet did not destroy the splines. They're still good. So, like I said previously, I could only assume somebody was beating this on with a hammer. And even though these had a burr on them and I could not get the plates on easily, I could force them over. I got to assume they had a hell of a time putting this clutch together. Alright, let's make sure there's no rubbing noises. Beautiful. Other than a little bit of noise from the chain hitting the pad, perfect. And I could just see around the corner back here. And I got just a little bit of and I've got maybe 30 or 40 thou, maybe even 50 thou clearance between the nut and the back of the primary chain. So that's good to go. Yeah, with that fatter plate in there, that backing plate, this last fiber disc was just about even with the top of the splines. So that when this was put on, it really wasn't catching the splines, or just barely catching, and that would have caused a problem. Timing mark right there. Dot right there. I've turned this horizontally so that it'll line up with the slot and the releasing disc. These are new matching springs. As you recall, the ones that I took out, there were two different lengths in there. Like I said at the time, I don't know what the problem was that they were trying to compensate for, but apparently there was a problem. And then you tighten them down so that the top of this cup, or any of the cups, is 3/16 of an inch from the bottom of the spring pressure disc. So anyway, that's all there is to it. Hopefully this is done and it's going to stay together this time. I am out of here. Thanks for watching. It's been a long day dealing with this shit. Please subscribe. We'll see you next time.